a different kind of, this is going to be a little bit of a different kind of class since I don't have that handout in particular at the moment. But just so you guys know, you do have it on divination on the website. And so that should be accessible to you. I just like I have looked through all my emails. I just can't seem to find that one in particular. And so we're just kind of go on the fly here. And so when we're looking at the sign of Pisces, like we said, we're going to put together Aries and Aquarius, and that's how we get Pisces. Pisces is mutable, and that's how you get all mutable signs. The Hellenistic term for mutable is going to be double-bodied, or it's going to be mutable depending on what tradition of astrology you follow. And so with that being said, we get some traits of Pisces being more so about visionary, being a visionary, or like imagination. Remember that Pisces is coming in right before Aries, and so it can be a time where we're seeing a lot of light coming back, but the light hasn't fully returned. Like when we do see it in Aries, the light has returned, and we're seeing that burst of energy. And so what's embodied by the sign of Pisces is like that anticipation of the light returning after being in the dark for so long, or being in chaos, but still being in chaos. And so it's like a cycling of between hope and loss of hope, or vision and loss of vision, looking into the potential of things without, actually having it. And so we can see traits like, being optimistic, seeing things with rose-colored glasses on, or like seeing the potential of things. But we can also see being imaginative, compassionate. And that's also coming, the compassionate side of Pisces is really coming from the Jupiter aspect of Pisces. And so we can see what other things could we see for Pisces? We can see, being very energetic when it does come to like the emotions, or, the emotions are able to be stirred. So we could see that as being moody, or we could see it as being enthusiastic, whichever one you prefer, I suppose, whichever one is, a more, I guess, on the spectrum for the person displaying the traits. Just as a reminder that Pisces is an archetype. So all of the signs that are archetypes, and people just embody those archetypes being born under the sign. And so when we're talking about signs here, part of the class is talking about like how do we embody this in a person, but a lot of it is just talking about the energy, detached from a person in general. And so that's how and eventually we would have to look at it that way, because when we look at trying to predict like world events, or like transits and things like that, you need to be able to look at Pisces, or like the signs in that way. That's not going to be like attached to like how people would express that energy. And so with Pisces, we do get like that imagination, being very compassionate. Neptune is also the co-ruler of this sign. So we see like a lot of delusion, and maybe being very intuitive and in touch with the divine. I do apologize. I've forgotten the Egyptian and Babylonian myth behind Pisces. Since I don't have the actual handout today, but I do remember the Greek mythology aspect of Pisces is going to be the story of, Aphrodite and her son. They were escaping Olympus, and they turned themselves into fish, and they had a ribbon, so that they would never lose each other in the water. And so because I think they were trying to escape from the god Typhon, if I remember that correctly. But basically, so yeah, they were trying to save themselves from a monster, and they turned themselves into fish, tied themselves together so that they would never be lost. And so we get this very romantic aspect of Pisces that comes with that from the mythology of Pisces as well. So, with that being said, I guess I could try and show this like on the YouTube video as well. I guess like on the whiteboard. Let me see if I can put this on the whiteboard. Hopefully, this will show up. Um, let's see. Okay, so let me actually present. So the actual glyph of Pisces is going to look a little bit like this. So for the people watching on Facebook Live, you won't be able to see this. However, um, when we look at the actual, um, when we actually look at the glyph of Pisces, we're looking at it looking kind of like something like this. Sorry, this is like a horrible drawing. If you can see this, I hope you can see this. If not, then then I'm just kind of like talking through it. But the glyph of Pisces kind of looks like an H with like just very curvy legs on it, and so it looks a little bit like that. But we can see the glyph looking like this, and then the actual constellation, I guess, looks a little bit like two fish. I'm going to draw like a very non-detailed uh, representation of it on the whiteboard on YouTube as well. And so here we go. So it's something like this, essentially. And yeah, so it looks something like that. I know this is not the best like representation of the of the constellation, but forgive my drawing skills. But yeah, so that is going to be the constellation of Pisces. And so we're going to jump into now some different things that Pisces or Neptune will rule over. Again, I apologize. I don't have the list because can't find the worksheet. And so I'm just kind of gonna like kind of freestyle here. So when we're talking about um, Pisces, as far as like what does it rule over, or what are some things that it rules over? So we're going to want to look at Neptune. We can look a little bit at Jupiter, I suppose, but we want to look at Neptune in particular. So Neptune is all about screens, or like things that are virtual, things that you can't really touch. Even when you are looking at a screen, it's the thing in the screen that's very like Neptunian, even though Neptune is said to rule over screens. So it's the things that you can't touch, or that maybe you can't, but the things you can't touch, but the things you can feel. So Neptune has a lot of ties with, like, of course, like ghosts and specters, or like whatever you want to call them. You can also say Neptune would rule over your emotions, as well as large bodies of water, of course. Spirituality, I think, as a whole is going to be like a very Neptune thing, or like that connection with the divine. So therefore, it could also rule over like things like meditation, although it doesn't rule over those things specifically, or not specifically, but exclusively. A lot of the things that Neptune is going to rule over, it's also going to share its rulership with Saturn. When Saturn was actually, or when Neptune was actually discovered, we actually saw Saturn right next to Neptune. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that we see a lot of the same rulerships being shared between the two. And so, with that being said, we're just going to kind of run down a list of some of the things that Neptune will represent. Neptune does rule over not just screens, but also rules over like poisons and viruses, and dance and dreams and sleep. So it's a bit of a mixed bag with Neptune, as it is with all of the planets. Neptune is going to be that higher octave of Venus as well. And so where Venus rules like aesthetic beauty, and it's like it is very like usually very much rooted in like the tangible stuff. Neptune is going to be like when someone like it's going to be like the difference between, so Venus would be like, oh, this person is beautiful. Neptune is going to be like, oh, this person has beautiful energy. They have this beautiful aura around them. It's not something that you can touch or put your hands on. It's something more that is just kind of felt. Things that you can feel but aren't able to actually prove that they're there. Um, it's going to be very much like a Neptune kind of thing. So we're just going to run through this list a little bit. I'm going to kind of take time to look at a couple of these and talk about them a little bit deeper. But so Neptune is going to rule over the following things. So we have, sorry, my computer like glitched for a second. Okay, so we have things like ambushes, chaos, covert alliances. So anything that's like under a veil, because Neptune is also going to rule secrets, just like the 12th house does. The 12th house is going to be related or, like, I guess, corresponded with Neptune and Pisces. Remember when you do read astrology that house is always going to trump the sign. And some might say that technically the house trumps the planet. However, I disagree. I think, like, if we're going to put like a hierarchy on it, then house definitely trumps the sign. However, the planet and the house, I look at them as being like very exclusive from each other. They're more like helping and supporting each other. So we have ambush, chaos, covert alliances, deception and lies, trends and movements. Remember, like when we're talking about the higher octave of Venus, when we were talking about Libra and Taurus, we were talking about how Venus energy is always going to be complemented or like joined together with Mars energy. And so we can see some sort of like undertone of like some sort of violence possibly being showing up when we talk about Venus and those, and so therefore we also see some of those undertones when we talk about Neptune as well. It's nice, it's, or not nice, but it's funny because we had in this last eclipse, we had it ruled by Mars, but Mars was conjunct Neptune. And so we got a lot of weird things happening. Like in particular, a job or like a shop that I read at here in Cleveland, they very shortly after the eclipse, they had issues with water, like I think a pipe burst, but also there was like a lot of dust kind of like in the air. And that's like very Neptune. Obviously the water is, but Neptune is also going to be like smoke and mirrors and things like that, things that are unclear. And so I thought that that was very interesting. That I mean, like obviously that's not great for them as a business, but I just thought, you know, it's really interesting that that happens like right after eclipse, an eclipse where the ruler of that eclipse was conjunct Neptune. And so we have trends and movements. So all the TikTok trends and like, you know, social media trends, not social media itself, but trends that are carried out on social media, any kind of like hive mind kind of thing is going to be probably more so like Neptune based or it could be, I suppose, like Uranus based, but it's going to be anything that's like hive mind, but very creative is very much Neptune, like a Neptune thing. Trends and movements, mobs are going to be also a Neptune kind of thing. Desire is coming from being the higher octave of Venus. Dreams and dreamers, as well as imagination, false hope, and success or failure that comes through women in particular. I think that's really interesting. I have been trying my best to keep my eye on the news without like overwhelming myself, because we have Neptune, of course, in Pisces, but we have Pallas Athene in Taurus. So Pallas Athene is in, she's in a Venus ruled sign. Venus is, of course, women. And so I am looking at not just the whole crisis happening with women's rights right now, but also what are powerful women kind of how are they like chiming in on that? Because that'll be interesting on how certain bills or laws are actually passed or rejected. Um, it'll be really interesting to see because Neptune is, of course, it's chiming in on all of that. And so we could see some very powerful women playing a major role in saying yay or nay to a certain movement, and playing a very key role in that. Horses, as well as psychics, pessimism, and secrets are all going to be Neptune things. Social unrest, sudden death, wanderings, and sleep. So a lot of people get very confused about why Neptune is sudden death. And so, like, the way I think about it, you can think about it, obviously any way you want to. So with Neptune, yeah, I'm definitely interested to see what happens too. With Neptune, think about like when you go to sleep, like when you get older, like because we have to remember that Pisces is as an energy is associated with older people, or like an older energy. Fun fact, like if someone has like a Pisces moon, I'll usually ask them in a reading if there is some sort of like special connection to like an older woman, like a grandmother. A lot of times you'll see that with Pisces moon people is that there's some sort of connection with like a grandmother in particular. And so that's kind of like how we're also seeing like that Venus or like the connection with women with Neptune. But like think about like when older people like go to sleep and they just kind of like slip into like that eternal sleep, which is death. You don't plan for those things. It is like a very sudden death situation. I think that sound like the way I phrased it here probably sounds more dramatic than like it actually is. But it's basically when dying in your sleep is a Neptune thing. However, so could it could also be like dying with like if like we talked about before, poisons. So if like you were poisoned, obviously that's going to be a sudden death thing, or like something that goes undetected, like a virus or like a poison, is going to be very much like a Neptune thing as well. It's something that you can't see, or that kind of flies under the radar before it gets dangerous. And so then we also have exile. So Neptune can be very much be about like the isolation part or like banishment, being away from home, being away from what's familiar, having to wander. So secret societies, social unrest, sudden death, wanderings, sleep, poetry, dance, harmony, rhythm, emotions and feelings, intuition, poisons, viruses, stringed instruments, addiction, and alcohol. Alcohol is a big one with Neptune. Drugs and anemia. I should also say insomnia as well. However, that's more of like a planetary aspect with Neptune. If you have insomnia, is I mean, I guess it depends on, it depends on the person. We're in an interesting time astrologically right now, for sure. Um, the the thing with insomnia is that it can be a Neptune thing. However, there's usually another planet at play if you have insomnia. But because Neptune rules over sleep, it rules over insomnia in some way. Then we also have energy depletion and burnout. Nutrition is also going to be a Neptune thing. Catalepsy, the sea, dolphins, and the connection to the divine. Let's see. For parts of the body, we have the cerebral ventricles, spinal fluid, pineal gland. Not surprising, that's where we get like, intuitive hits, or that's said the pineal gland is said to be like the third eye. And the optic nerves are all going to be associated very much with Neptune. Neptune co-rules with Jupiter over the sign of Pisces, and in modern astrology is associated with the 12th house. the travel time through one sign to another is going to be 14 years. So I actually do believe that we're going to see Neptune change over into Aries next year, if I'm not mistaken. Because next year is 2020. Yeah, next year is 2023, which means that we'll see Neptune move into Aries next year. Let me I want to get the date in particular. Hold on. When does Neptune? Oh no, I'm a liar. Never mind. Neptune will briefly go into um, Aries in on March 30th of 2025 until October, and then it'll retrograde back into Pisces, and then it'll go back into Aries much later, or not much later, but later that year. And so Neptune takes its time. It's a slower moving planet for sure. And so then with retrogrades, we see Neptune retrograde once a year for about 5 months. So when I say 5 months, it can be like a little over 5 months, but like shorter than 6 months. But it's like, in that sweet spot there. It's what I will say about the age of Aquarius. So it's kind of like when you have like the Renaissance period. The Renaissance period was very much like you didn't have like a certain date on it. It just kind of happened. Which always kind of like gets me when people are, trying to say we're entering the age of Aquarius on this date, because it's just it's not something that happens on a certain date and has an end date. It's always going to be like, I like to use the example of like the Renaissance period. We don't have a date for the Renaissance period, like starting, it just like gradually happened. And so, sure, you could say that we're in it now. However, if you're trying to associate it with a certain like actual like start date and end date, that wouldn't be a thing. But yeah, you could say that we're in it. The retrogrades are going to be for Neptune, and I said like that a little over 5 months. And so we talked about Neptune. I'm going to kind of try and follow how the worksheet would go, even though I don't have it right now. We'll follow. So I think what would come next would be like some crystals and herbs associated with Pisces. So some herbs that are associated with Pisces would be like lavender, because lavender is not just a Mercury herb, but it's also a Neptune herb, since it's the sleepy part of that herb. But we can also see like bladderwrack is associated with Neptune, so therefore is also a Pisces herb. And so those two in particular, when we're looking at crystals, you could go with like aquamarine, you can go with amethyst, anything that's up there like in the crown chakra, or in like the higher chakras would be like a very Pisces kind of crystal. Aquamarine is just the one that I think like most people think of, but you could also go for like amethyst as being like a Pisces, crystal as well. Celestite, all of the I think maybe not Damberite, but I think celestite would be up there with like being a Pisces crystal. Maybe also what comes to mind, I think, like first with Pisces is going to be like anything actually from the ocean. So like seashells, even though it's not technically crystals, it's coming from the actual ocean. So now let's take a look at some famous Pisces people. So let me bring this up. So obviously we have Rihanna, that is a Pisces. And then we also have Queen Latifah, Justin Bieber, Drew Barrymore, Dakota Fanning, Jessica Biel Emily Blunt. Um, Shaquille O'Neal is a Pisces. I had no idea. And then we also have, who else is a Pisces? Janae Aiko is a Pisces as well. There you said Queen Latifah, Eva Longoria, Kesha is a Pisces, Camila Cabello, um, Carrie Underwood. Oh, we have the same birthday, me and Carrie Underwood. I never knew that. And then let's do one more. Simone Biles is also a Pisces as well. All right, so I think at this point, the class would shift to the interpretations throughout the sign. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. So let's talk about Pisces rising. So what the thing about like Pisces rising is a lot of times you can't tell with these people. Like I think I was saying like with Aquarius rising and Scorpio rising, you can't really tell like, or you can't like, not that you can't tell, you can tell that they're a very like distinguished uh traits about these people where you can like tell. Like Scorpio risings have the very pronounced like eyebrow area, and then Aquarius rising people will have something, usually I see it as like a very like long pronounced nose, or they have like this very almost like very unique sense of beauty in the face area. They just look very different, almost alien like from other people. But we with Pisces rising people just kind of look like everybody. They look like everybody else. They're very, I think like that's probably like one of the harder signs to kind of like pin down when we're talking about actual when we talk about like actual like signs when it's in the first house. Pisces rising, because Pisces is just kind of like taking all of the signs and like putting them into one, because all of the signs are going to compound on each other. And so Pisces is the last one, and so it's just kind of getting all of the signs, and so therefore Pisces risings just kind of look like everybody. However, I have heard that Pisces risings will have like lighter eyes, like even if they have like brown eyes, they'll be lighter. I don't know. I call BS on that, but if that's something that you resonate with, go for it. But and so we could, I guess you could also say that Pisces rising people, maybe they look like fish too. But let's take a look at some other traits other than physical. So having Pisces in the first house is going to be maybe someone that is going to be very creative, very spiritual, very in tune with the divine, or someone that might have a martyr complex, might be very emotional, hopefully not sensitive. Sensitivity is kind of where things can get choppy, or when things can they're not productive anymore. Being emotional is okay, but being sensitive can be a bit counterproductive. But either one could be the case with a Pisces rising. Pisces is known for being like very mysterious as well, and so it can be very hard to get a read on these people. I will also say with like Pisces rising and Gemini rising, even it can be very hard to know how old these people are, or like because they don't look their age. It can be more so like almost like not in the same way as Capricorn rising, but Pisces rising people will often look younger than they actually are. Whereas like I think Capricorn rising people, they will look older, like if they're younger, but by the time they actually get older, they look younger. But Pisces rising people just always look young. like, and so we can see with Pisces rising, unless they have like some really bad aspects to their first house, we can see maybe some really great like skin, or like just having like really smooth skin. They can also be a bit paler even if they are dark skinned. And so we can see that as well. These are going to be creative, super emotional, and moody, or moody even. These can be people that are they're very imaginative as well. But I think that's kind of like going into creativity, but they can, see the potential of a situation rather than looking at the actual realities as well. Having Neptune in the first. So when clients usually have Neptune in the first, like I have Neptune in the first, it can come out a lot of different ways. Neptune in the first will obviously be a lot like Pisces rising. It gives that kind of feel, but Neptune in the first can point to some things such as maybe struggling with some sort of addiction, especially if it does have to do with like alcohol. It can have to do with being a bit more mysterious, and again, like not really being super open when it does come to like maybe meeting new people. Maybe other people have to make the first move. It can also be like sign ascending moon. Um, we can there are a lot of books, to be honest, because I'm like, that's how I learned a lot of this. Or you could take like a program, um, the internet too. I'm like, I'm not even trying to be funny, but like, it's a lot of yeah, no. It's everybody has to start somewhere. But I'm trying to think. Like, of course, like Llewellyn's books are gonna be good for like beginners because I think it is very precise ish when we're talking about like just starting out, but you would want to move beyond that. But those, I like those books because it's not a lot of like overwhelming information, if that makes sense. So Llewellyn's books will give you the information that's accurate technically, but it's not overwhelming. So if you don't want to break out like a 500-page book on astrology to learn about all of this stuff, then I would start with Llewellyn first. Also, Astrology for the Soul by Nadia Shah is really good as well. But so Neptune in the first is also going to speak to, looking younger than you actually are as well. But you're embodying Neptune. A lot of your personality and your actual like identity is wrapped up in Neptune. And so therefore it can be someone that shifts a lot when they are talking about identity, someone that might not know what their identity actually is. And so it can just be very like much like a chameleon having Neptune in the first. Eventually, so anybody that has Neptune in the first, they do need to like get a handle on that and try and figure out how to like confine that scene, because essentially it's like a lot of smoke and mirrors like around their identity. Neptune is kind of like everything that makes sense but doesn't make sense as well, and so it's not super defined. It doesn't have a lot of structure. Neptune, as far as a planetary energy, is going to be very different from Saturn. Saturn is all about structure. Neptune is no structure at all virtually. And so you can see these people tending to be more of people that are more like free flowing, or just not really into a lot of structure. So Pisces in the second is not going to be the greatest with money. That's like my first thought. It's going to be more about like it can be a lot of, yes, there's a lot of manifestation of the money coming in, but it's also a lot of like money like just kind of rolling out too. So it's like literally like water, like money is like water going through your hands, or like through one of those colanders or something like that, where you like nothing is ever being like stored. And so there can be some spending issues because like even though yes there is a lot of manifestation of money, or maybe that person is making a lot of money creating things, or is, their job has a lot to do with like maybe screens or being like on television or being even in social media, because this would also be an Aquarius rising. Um, the There's going to be a lot of um, uh, yeah, there can just be a lot of fluctuation with how income is made. And income can always be like up for change as well. Like I said, professions or like how they feel about themselves are always going to be like in a flux of change as well. So it can be like, they um because Pisces is in the second house where we do talk about self-esteem, a lot of their self-esteem can be, wrapped up in what other people think about them. Like, so if they have friends around them that are really pumping them up, they're going to be great. However, if they feel like they are not being like pumped up or whatever, or like, they aren't or they're like hanging around people that don't have the best self-esteem, then they aren't going to feel that way either. Pisces as an energy really takes on a lot of what it's around. It's a psychic sponge. And so the same can be said for work as well. It's great for like, having a job that's trendy, very creative and everything like that, but it can have a lot of fluctuation. So then Neptune in the second is going to be a lot of the same thing. However, Neptune can be, we're talking about finances, can be like some struggles around finances. It doesn't even have to be that finances, like, it's hard for you to save. Even though that would still be the case. It can be like there is like real struggle around just having finances in general. Because Neptune, I don't think I listed it on even on the actual like handout that's on the website. It can be very much like issues with finances as far as you don't have any, because remember we were also talking about Neptune is about wandering. And so Neptune actually rules homeless people or people that don't have a place to call their own. It's not exclusively homeless people, because not everybody that doesn't have a home, a physical home, is homeless. But it can be also like nomads too. And so maybe when we're talking about the second house, it could be someone that chooses to live extremely minimally. we could say that, or somebody that their needs kind of transcend the very physical nature of the 12th house. The same thing for self-esteem is going to be the same thing that I was saying for like Pisces in the second, about it really taking on the shape of the environment it's in. So then Pisces in the third is going to be great when it does come to like maybe art therapy, teaching others about things that are a bit more spiritual. Pisces in the third is going to lean into any kind of like creative writing too. I could see that, like, writing fiction. This is the house where we get everyday tasks as well. And I think this is the only place where Pisces in the third kind of doesn't do the best, because this is about like, everyday routine in some way, or like what you're doing, like as far as errands. And Pisces is very much more mystical than the third house. And so it can be like some struggles with keeping up with everyday routines. Neptune in the third is going to be about the same thing. But it can be someone that isolates from the group, instead of joining in the group. However, this could also be like a cult leader, so it could be like isolating other people too, like because to an extent the third house is about like cults and small leaders and cults as well. And so I can see like Neptune in the third being either somebody that could be a cult leader. I mean, that's not the only way we could look at that. Like, so if you have someone, in your family or friends that has Neptune in third, please don't tell them that they're a cult leader unless they are, then, call it out where you need to. But it can be someone that opts for some sort of isolation due to like spiritual reasons. Like, so this could be something as, benign as like a priestess or something like that. Priestesses, they just spend a lot of time alone because they're talking to the spirits. And that's their world. It's not anything malicious. It's just that they spend a lot of time alone talking to spirit rather than actual people. And then, like, of course, like, on the other side of the spectrum, we could get dark and talk about like cult leaders and things like that. And so it can cover a lot of different things with Neptune in the third. We could also see like someone that maybe does a lot of wandering when we're talking about like how you interact with your environment. So I could see this being like maybe somebody that's backpacking through like like the country that they're in, because the third house is very much about the country you're in, not countries that are overseas. So like if someone wanted to take like a road trip from like California to New York, that would be like somebody maybe that has like Neptune either transiting their third or like has that natally. Pisces in the fourth, we could see like a lot of like creativity, romance. It's kind of like the home becomes the dream. So these people can have like a very like idealized idea about what family means, or like what it means to kind of have like those great family dynamics. And so whether that's real or not, you know, is beside the point. Like, and I would argue sometimes it's not recognized that maybe they're hoping for the dream, because the fourth house is not just about it's not just about the home that we were raised in, but it's also about the home that we want to create as an adult. And so that part is going to be about more like the home that we want to create. We create what maybe we didn't have when we had Pisces in the fourth. But I would also say that it's going to be Pisces in the fourth can just be about like decorating your home with a lot of, very like beautiful, like ethereal kind of like pieces of art. Pisces in the fourth can also be like, somebody that lives away from someone, as can Neptune in the fourth. It can either be like, not having a home, or, you choose to live like off in a forest somewhere in a cottage. That would also be like a Neptune in the fourth thing. It can also, because we do have the fourth house representing the father, Neptune in the fourth or Pisces in the fourth can mean that there's some sort of distance happening between, like, within the family. And it could have to do with the father in particular. Neptune in the fourth can say that the father is actually absent, or there might be some issues. It depends. It depends, of course, like with all of these interpretations, it actually depends on what else is happening, like in the person's chart, to be able to make those kinds of predictions. But Neptune in the fourth, like the first thing I think of is like maybe having an absent father, or having a father that maybe is struggling with some addictions. In particular, it could be alcohol or drugs. Some sort of like escapism is happening when it concerns the father. But you would want to look at what else is happening there. And so then we look at Pisces in the fifth. Super creative. It's really going to be able to dive into the self-expression in different ways, not just through the emotions. And so it can really look into not just like painting, but I'd also say like this person, since they're very good at like shape shifting, acting could be like a great way that this person could express themselves. Or different aspects of themselves. Pisces is, going to be very multifaceted in the fifth house, but it can also have a lot of dramatic emotions. And, you can see all emotions kind of like on full blast, and, they are not going to be shy about showing, those aspects of themselves. We could also see maybe this person, fifth house is about children and risks as well. And so maybe this person is no stranger to like wanting to take risks for like the potential that they see or the vision that they have in mind. But Pisces in the fifth could also be like maybe somebody that really wants children, or, I guess on the opposite end of that spectrum, they want to be isolated from children. So maybe this is somebody that maybe if they do have children, that maybe they want to create some distance. So I'd say like maybe this is a person, like if any, like I'm running a scenario here, Pisces in the fifth, I could totally see that person like maybe, wanting to be a surrogate, or just it could be like a good case or a good placement for maybe somebody that was a surrogate mother, or like gave the baby up for adoption if they did have children. But Pisces in the fifth, like with children, are usually very good with children, because they can tap into that creativity and that belief. Pisces is all about belief because it is ruled by Jupiter, the planet of belief, and then Neptune is just like kind of hyping it up even more. And so there's this mystical imagination and belief when we talk about the fifth house. So, and that's why I was saying in the beginning that it's very creative. Neptune in the fifth is going to be a lot of the same thing, except it doesn't really talk that much about children as much. I mean, we can still look at it as like there's something going on with like isolation in children, or like the dream of children, or like being very in tune psychically with children, or just having a very open heart. I think could be another one, but we can also see that with Neptune in the sixth as well. But we could see with Neptune in the fifth, since that's what we're talking about, like a lot of creativity, a lot of openness to different ways of expressing yourself. It can also be, potentially putting yourself into like dangerous situations, I suppose, but it can really speak to finding different ways to tap in. Like, so I'm thinking like shamanism could be a way that Neptune in the fifth could like manifest itself, because the fifth house is going to be self-expression. And so maybe this person feels like, even if they're not able to express themselves on this plane, that they're very much able to express themselves intuitively and spiritually. And so that becomes almost like their whole identity in a way. And so we could see that happening. Pisces in the sixth, and Pisces and Neptune in the sixth are both going to be extremely generous. I'm trying to think about, this would be a Libra rising. And so there can be some lack of, at this point, I'm talking about Pisces and Neptune together, or not together, but Pisces in the sixth and Neptune in the sixth. That would be both of these, this interpretation. Would be like maybe a lack of recognition for their creativity. The sixth house is a house where it's not easily seen by the first house. And so any kind of like recognition, especially it's not seen by the 10th house either. And so there can be some issues being seen for like the work that you do, or like the attention to detail that you have. But Neptune in the sixth, these people really struggle with like day-to-day tasks, and like making sure that dishes are clean, or that that they take out the trash. Like they struggle with those kinds of everyday tasks, and like coming up like with a routine most times. But Pisces in the sixth can just be like, they maybe work in an environment that's not super structured, where they have a lot of freedom to do what they want to do. That's going to be more so a Pisces in the sixth thing, rather than a Neptune in the sixth thing. We could also say that Pisces in the sixth, can also struggle with like some health issues, as well as Neptune in the sixth. Neptune in the sixth, as in particular, can point to maybe some issues with health. Neptune and the 12th house like kind of have ties to hospitals. And so we can see like maybe someone either working in a hospital, or a place of isolation, even like jails, because we have to remember that the sixth house, when we're talking about work, it's like places that you don't really want to spend a lot of time, but somebody has to do it. So like, or, somewhere that it's very like strenuous, but, you need people there. Like, obviously, like think about like first responders. That's like, they are very like sixth house, like people. It's a tough job. It's a very intense job, but somebody has to do it. But when you put Neptune there, or Pisces in the sixth, it's going to be somebody that is either going to work in that kind of situation where it's a harder job, but these people are going to have a very big heart, and they're going to want to help no matter what no matter what maybe the risk is, it's going to be of service in that way. I remember talking about earlier in this series that Pisces and Virgo, or sorry, that they're really only about 6 signs. You just kind of have to look at it more so as opposite signs are going to be 2 sides of the same coin. So really, you only have 6 signs in the zodiac. And so we still see that sensitivity and that want to be of service to other people that we often see in Virgo, but it's just flipped on its head when we look at Pisces in the 6th. Pisces in the 7th is going to maybe tend towards a person that maybe with, as far as like a partner, is going to want someone that's, very compassionate, maybe someone that is a bit more reclusive or more private. I could also say that about Pisces in the 4th. Maybe that person grew up in a very private home, but Pisces in the 7th maybe wants a person that, is very romantic, but not super like out there. Like this isn't going to be the person that wants to like post their person like all over social media. Like, but they want that adoration from their partner. They want that romantic side of the relationship for sure. This could be like a long distance relationship as well. A Pisces in the 7th, like the partner is literally far away. Or just somebody very creative or like, very open-minded and in tune with like spirituality and things like that. Neptune in the 7th can be like a dissolving, and wherever Neptune is as well is like where things dissolve. So this person could probably maybe have some issues with even getting in a relationship in the first place. They, it can be almost like they're single for what feels like forever. Or they can really attract Neptune-like people. So these are going to be people that maybe don't have the best sense of structure when it comes to like just being an adult. So these are going to be like a very like spiritually like inclined, very creative, like starving artists kind of people. Or I guess like if they are very structured, maybe these are going to be the people that have partners that work in places like hospitals or jails or psychiatric wards or things like that can also be, I guess, a way that we could see that as well. But Neptune can also just like dissolve things. And so it's like a constant changing of a relationship. So like getting in and out of relationships can be a big thing as well. Pisces in the 7th can also be like a partner that mirrors you a lot. But you're not really seeing it, especially because the 7th house is your mirror already. The descendant is your mirror. So then we have Pisces in the 8th. I think these people, more than anything, are very good at taking things apart, questioning them, and then just keeping a lot of information to themselves and then like shape-shifting based on that. They're really able to tap into like the more subtle vibrations of people and situations, and they can extract a lot of information just by observing things. They have great intuition for sure. I have quite a few clients that have Pisces in the 8th, like with like sun or moon in the 8th or whatever in Pisces. And these people I've noticed more than anybody else, like, their emotions are deep, for sure. And there is this, there can be this, very distinct mistrust of others. However, I will also say that, they're some of the most in tune or astute people that I've ever met. Like, nothing really gets by them, and they don't necessarily need to have like proof about it. They just know things. Pisces in the 8th can tend towards depression. It can tend towards like, again, shifting into what a romantic partner needs you to be, not who you actually are. And then Neptune in the 8th can be like some sort of like abuse when it does come to like addiction and like, substances that allow you to escape reality. But I think ideally Neptune in the eighth can really give some great ability um, to find um, to really like question like certain spiritual ideals. So like getting into the occult or diving into like more taboo topics or things that are hidden are really going to be their jam. And so we could see that. Pisces in the ninth is going to maybe want to be like a world traveler, someone that travels internationally or works internationally. Could be like the person that's really into like, Habitat for Humanity or like, building orphanages like across across different seas or like, um, having some noble purpose to like help everybody because Pisces is pulling from Aquarius's energy. And so it's like what is good for everybody, where is unity at? And so the ninth house is a lot about law, and it's going to be a lot about other cultures and people that are different from you, like from different cultures and different countries. And so that's why I say world traveler or somebody that, builds orphanages and like I don't know, like Nicaragua or something like that. Like, but we could also see, people that maybe try to evade the law. So I could see this kind of being like maybe somebody that opts for like off the grid living. You would have to see what else is going on in the chart to make that kind of prediction. But I could see that. Neptune in the ninth is definitely going to be somebody that maybe wants to do the off the grid living or something off the grid. They want to be hidden from the law. You could also see maybe some like law deviance with that as well. Neptune in the ninth could also be Neptune in the ninth can be just like a divine connection because the ninth house is about spirituality as well. Pisces in the 10th is going to excel, first of all, in any kind of like social media or making videos or like anything that's like super creative like that, where they're being shown on screens in particular, or where they're seeing, where their creativity is kind of like on full view. They want to be recognized for their kind heart, their knowledge, and what they create. That's very different and unique. The things that they pioneer. These people can be very ambitious, but it's in a bit of a softer way. Neptune in the 10th can be a lot of changing or like transforming your career, and it's still going to want to be known for its creativity and its compassionate heart. But I would say it's like maybe somebody that works remotely, or like their career is very remote, or just something that has to do with water could even be a thing as well. Pisces in the 11th is going to be maybe you have some very religious friends, or maybe you're very into like, working in social justice, or, you're a big dreamer. That could be another one with Pisces in the 11th. Neptune in the 11th is going to be in particular, that one is going to be maybe some friends or dreams in particular. So you could have like really, you could have like people that are prophets or like seers with Neptune in the 11th. Since it is about your hopes, dreams, and wishes, and dreams can be like, literal, like sleep dreams. This could also be like with Neptune in the 12th as well, like having prolific or prophetic dreams. But having Neptune in the 11th can be like, your friends are always very distant from you, like physical distance. And so it can also be like, friends that are very open-minded, or friends that or surrounding yourself with people that are a bit more spiritually inclined and open-minded. Pisces in the 12th can definitely be very isolated, very creative as well, very tapped in tune with their creativity. It can be someone that really needs to dive into their subconscious and can do really well with like therapy and things like that. Pisces is kind of like, it's very moody, and the 12th house is about our unconscious, as well as our fears. And so there can be some fears around like being alone, as with Neptune in the 12th too. And so Neptune in the 12th can also be like about isolation. It can be about, depending on what it's making aspects to, it could be like working or like, exiling yourself from your homeland, or like, having out of body experiences and that being very familiar to you as well. So we've been talking about Pisces for this whole class. So we're going to jump down to Pisces moon. And so having a Pisces moon, like I was saying, it can be like, a certain, um, connection to like a grandmother in particular. I've seen that a lot. But it can just be like older people or who you relate best with. Pisces in the um, moon in Pisces is, it's very sweet, very compassionate, very romantic. It's a big dreamer as well. These people are very intuitive, and they can really be people that, um, and they're, are they just like Sun in Pisces? Are they ever really here, kind of thing? um, you can see a lot of like spiritualism or a lot of like, strong beliefs when it does come to like their self-expression, religion, and like, these people are always changing as well, shape shifting, if you will. I think Pisces is like where you kind of shape shift in your chart. Wherever Pisces is in your birth chart is where you shape shift. And so then we have Mercury in Pisces. Mercury actually doesn't do the best in Pisces. It's actually in its fall in Pisces. And so we can see a lot of making decisions based off of emotions when Mercury is in Pisces, or, not making rational decisions because Neptune is in the mix with Pisces. Mercury is all about logic. Neptune is not. And so it can be like not making the most logical decisions or not having like the best foresight or making decisions based off of intuition, not having the facts. But that's not always bad. So you can kind of like jump at things that you don't actually have any proof about, and make that decision. Or it can be like someone that's very interested in talking about and teaching and learning about more spiritual subjects as well. Having Venus in Pisces, Venus does very well in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is going to be where Venus is exalted. And Venus in Pisces is going to be a placement that can really, where Venus can really express itself. We see a lot of fertility here. We see a lot of creativity. We see a lot of romantic, themes coming up. We see, a lot of like great fashion and, it's Pisces being a Jupiter ruled sign traditionally gives a boost to self esteem. I guess the question becomes like, is that a false sense of self esteem or is it a real self esteem, since Pisces is going to be where we maybe mirror others at? Having Mars in Pisces is going to, like the big thing with Mars and Pisces, because Mars is actually in Pisces now, is really going to be like talking about like what is my dream versus what is your dream. People with Mars and Pisces can get caught up a lot in like, in other people's battles or in the dreams or visions of other people. I'm not saying that they're not ambitious. It can just be, there can be a need to kind of get back to their own space and really understanding what is theirs and what isn't theirs. These are going to be the people that are going to champion for others. They're always going to stand up for the underdog, for sure. Having Jupiter in Pisces is going to be all of the Pisces things all the time. We just, of course, had Jupiter in Pisces, and Jupiter will briefly go back into Pisces at the end of this year, or towards the end of this year, yeah, on October 28th. And so we can see with Jupiter in Pisces, there can be a lot of, increased compassion, finding new treasures, in the sea or in water, or, there can be like an abundance of like support from friends, can also come in as well. And people like really focusing on unity and coming together. What are we doing for everybody is like a big theme when Jupiter is in Pisces as well, as we see a lot of luck and creativity come up as well. A lot of magic, and then we can see with Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn in Pisces is going to maybe be talking more so about fear. and needing to conquer fear in a way when it does come to maybe being more free and not having structure. Saturn is going to really force you to see the downfalls of, like, not seeing reality, but it can also really encourage you to still go for things, and stand on your own, not having to always have somebody that you're depending on. With Saturn and Pisces as well, it's going to really push you to, make those dreams a reality, and not just sit around and, actually make it happen and get past the fear so that you can actually make the dream real instead of just wishing for it. It's really going to emphasize that work, or that work is going to get you the dream. Having Uranus and Pisces is going to revolutionize, maybe, like, we could see like sleep studies, or like, people coming together to unify to kind of make big changes when it does come to like worldwide, or like changes in other countries. Neptune and Pisces is what we're in now. And so we're seeing a lot of like, just like emphasis on like dissociating, or like mental health, and like, we can see a lot of issues with addiction and alcohol too, but like we can also see maybe this burst of creativity and this renaissance of like art and creation as well. And like, really being all up in our screen. So we talk about like TikTok and social media and things like that, and us spending more time on those things in virtual reality. That's all Neptune and Pisces. Finally, we have Pluto and Pisces. Pluto and Pisces can be like the death of, or like, changing how we reach out to other people. I have a feeling that, whenever we do see Pluto move into Pisces, that it will be a lot more isolated. We might see a lot more, control over what we are seeing on our screens. Not that we're not seeing that already, but I think we'll see even more of that. Maybe possibly even some control or restrictions having to do with faith as well, and what faith can you practice. So that is going to be that's going to be the class for today. We can also look up um, what celebrities have Neptune and Pisces. Let me see, because I think Neptune and Pisces celebrities. Um, okay. So we're going to look at Nikola Tesla. I don't know much about him. Oh, actually, let's look at Sigmund Freud. So with outer planets like this, it's not so much about the placement as much as it is about the house that it's in. So not Nikola Tesla, Sigmund Freud, he is said to be a Scorpio rising. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And so that means that Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, he actually has Jupiter in Pisces as well. So that's really diving into like the mental health aspect and like the psychology of everything, especially with that Scorpio rising. And so that's going to be in his fifth house. And so we're really putting Neptune more so in the fifth. And so there can be like, a lot of creativity when it does come to like self-expression, especially when he talks about how other people are expressing themselves, and him like almost like maybe mirroring that, or like projecting that like onto other people. That can be how that kind of comes out. But I would also think that he would be like, on a personal level, he'd be somebody that's very creative in his private life as well. I don't know if he had any children or not. Like I said, Neptune in the fifth can be like, some distance from children. Let me actually look that up now. Did Sigmund Freud have children? Okay, so yes, he did have children. It's a psychoanalyst. Okay, it doesn't really say anything about his relationship with his children, though. But I will say also, like the other side of Neptune in the fifth can be like, just being very soft towards your children. Remember that Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. And so it can be like maybe a parent that isn't like super structured with their own children and they are just instead like very compassionate, which is, I mean, I suppose fine, to each their own. But other than that, that is our class today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys on Saturday. This is the last class for the Zodiac series. So on Saturday, we'll be starting something completely new. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.